a photo and now you want to make it a little bit more dramatic than what your camera or your um, phone kind of gave you in the first place. Now you can use adjustments over here to make it brighter. Let's say change your hue colors. Maybe you want it to look a little bit more fallish. You can mask out the color of the water. You can go into your curves. You can really be a photographer and do certain things. But what I like to do best is use the Camera Raw filter, which is kind of geared more towards photography. So um, I am going to convert this to a smart object. So I'm always going to convert my layer to a smart object when I use a filter. That's because when it's a smart object, you can go back and get rid of it. Get rid of edits that you've made that you don't like. Or you can just literally go back and edit it like it was instead of editing the edited version of the photo. I know it's kind of confusing. All right, so for this, a bunch of a little bit more accessible ways to change lighting, and it's basically all lighting or color are right here. So if I want to boost the exposure, highlights again are the upper end of your histogram. Remember, this is the lighting of your photo. A lot of shadows here, not a lot of highlights. In comparison, looks like there's just this one little area of highlights. So you don't want to blow anything out and be pure white. So maybe, well, sometimes you do. So maybe that's okay. I'm going to bring the shadows up because I like all the foliage. Looks like the horizon line is a little sideways. So I'm going to go up here. I'll rotate it a little. Just a little. Scale it up. Just a little bit. Oops. Click on that. Now I can go double click to get right back in there. So we're going to bring the whites down a little bit, the blacks down, just to get some nice contrast. Alright, this photo looks a little cool, and when I say cool, I mean a little bit blue. This would be an example of a cool photo. I think this looks like it's wants to be a little bit more warm. Green and magenta are another factor of your color balance. If your photo looks a little green like this, maybe, let's bring this over just a bit. I don't want to do too much because sometimes you really can't tell until you export it. Now texture, you see how texture kind of makes the contrast a bit more punchy. Same thing with clarity, but it does it in a little bit of a different way. Dehazing kind of gets rid of this like offset exposure. So those are some things. I kind of like the offset exposure. On this, you can still edit with the levels if you're that inclined. I am not. Usually if you're working with an image that was taken on your phone, you don't have to add sharpening. Sometimes you do. If you're on your camera, usually I add about 30. This was found online, so I'm just going to leave it as is. All right, and now over here, you can adjust maybe the hue. I'm going to make this a bit more green. You notice that your greens a lot of the time aren't green. They're part of yellows, and your oranges are a little more than you would think. That looks good. Saturation, maybe bring up the yellows a bit. Just to remind you guys, over here, the vibrance and saturation. Vibrance is saturation without yellow or oranges. Saturation is all the colors. So you can tell when I boost this up a bit, it doesn't get like really orangey in like those mid-tone colors. If I bring up the saturation, it all kind of gets punched up at the same level. All right. There's some other things you can do. You can split tone, which means the highlights have, let's see, some yellow to it. The lowlights, I can add some shadow, like a little bit cooler shadows. I like to do this very subtly in some cases. Lens corrections. Some of you may be taking photos, and the lens that you have may not be, you know, the $8,000 lens that professionals have, and even if you're a professional, you might still come across this. This is called chromatic aberration. You learn about this in your photography class, but you can go up to your lens corrections, and whatever color it looks like, just get rid of it. Kind of got to be careful because some of the times it takes away, like if it's a blue, and you turn the blue amount or the purple amount really high, it gets rid of the blue in the sky. So you just got to be mindful. This is all high level stuff, guys. So if everything's not sinking in to the best, don't worry about it. And now in here too, you can do basic editing with like spot healing. So there's some people in the back here. And you can start to kind of paint them out. I like to go in with like the spot healing tool and get rid of it manually. Oops. Looks like all those edits didn't save. Nice. But you can see how we're starting to edit the photo and give it some life in a different way. I'll just do some quick edits to show you again. Okay. And now we can turn it off, turn it back on. And we can even go back in and edit again or turn the opacity of it down a little bit. Since we rotated it a little, it has like that crazy looking effect. But it works like any other mask. So there it is. That's the Camera Raw tool, and that's kind of how I edit my basic photos, and add some quick adjustments to it. You can use your adjustments that you're more familiar with over here, but Camera Raw usually does a good job when I'm just processing a photo. All right, sweet.